Real line, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So once again, we are on the platform of Metamorphosis with another empowering session of with a global educator, I will say, education innovator, and she's none other than Dr. Pramila Kudva ma'am, one of the most respected and honored members of Metamorphosis also. So it is a glad to be connected to her, learn wisdom, knowledge from an experienced educationist with the old school methods as well as the traditional methods, connecting education and other narratives with it. So before I tell her to take the stage, I would like to share some few words. Education empowerment is the process of giving students the tools and resources they need to succeed. It helps students develop critical thinking skills, become more independent learners, and gain confidence. Benefits of education empowerment are economic opportunities, social cohesion, community development, education growth, breaking the barriers, economic growth, developing critical thinkings, and empowering students. Actually, not only students, but empowering the world, empowering educators, and empowering parents, the most crucial foundation of every child's education. So we have Dr. Pramila Kudwa here on this narrative nexus topic, a topic I think which many of us will not know what it entails. And ma'am will introduce about what is actually N square, narrative nexus. So over to you, Dr. Pramila ma'am. The stage is all yours and
Thank,
steal the thunder.
thank you,
Yeah.
Sonal. Yeah. Well, narrative nexus is nothing but using a storytelling method as a narrative to link to the subjects. Now, all of us at some point or other, we write stories and we post it on the social media, be it Instagram, be it Facebook, you're writing stories. Why are you writing stories? Let's see why we have to talk about the stories. But I also want to take you back in your timeline, on your timelines, to your grandmother. Your grandmother would have narrated stories to you. Did it appeal to you? Do you still remember them? It made an impact on you, right? And when parents read bedtime stories, you would cuddle, you will hug them, and then you would listen to them. And there were certain stories which only your mom had to read. There were only certain stories which your dad had to read. I still remember my daughter. So Peter Pan had to be read by dad. Winnie the Pooh had to be read by me. And if there was an exchange, it was not acceptable. So stories have a big impact on our lives. And stories do hone the personality of the child. Now let's see, for instance, let me share my presentation. Stories cannot be told just as a narrative. They need to have some props. So I have a presentation here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, why do we tell stories? It's a means of expression, and we tell them to connect to the others, share our experiences, pass down the knowledge, and evoke emotions through the power of words and imagination. It promotes empathy and understanding. As we go on, let's see how it promotes empathy. It builds bridges across differences. Now, you tell a story about being sympathetic or empathetic towards somebody, and then put it on the social media, you'll get responses. Responses based on emotions. They would say, I love it. This is something that has appealed to my psyche. This is something all of us need to do. This is humanitarian. This is egalitarian. God knows what kind of responses you will get, but they will emote and they will help you to bridge the differences and build bridges. There are different types of stories: oral tradition, narrative monologue, storytelling performance, poetry, and digital storytelling. But I'll be focusing only on the narratives, oral tradition. Now, to take you back, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Bhagavad Gita, they were all orally transmitted to the younger generation. It is unfortunate that today we have forgotten how to narrate these things, and we have forgotten what those techniques were. how it was told to us, how it was handed down to us. I remember my aunt used to sing the whole Bhagavad Gita in a song, in a format which none of us remember today. Unfortunate that it is lost. The culture which was so rich is lost. If I don't know, the chances of my children knowing it are even less. So let's see now how this goes. Oral tradition. It is one of the oldest forms of storytelling. And it includes, when there are stories, you need to have some embellishments and gestures and vocal variations to captivate the listeners. Now, Ramayana, when it is told in the north, is different from the Ramayana which is told in Sri Lanka. And the Ramayana which I saw in Cambodia was even different. So along with the culture, a few things do change. Now, did you know that Love and Kush were not as we expected them to be? Now, Sita Maya wanted to go and have a bath. She hands over her baby to the sage who was in deep meditation, tells him to take care of the baby. He was in deep meditation, and when Sita Maya comes back and picks up her baby, he is not aware. So when suddenly he finishes his meditation, he realizes the baby is not there. So he creates a baby. And that baby comes to be the twin of Love and Kush. This is what is told in Cambodia. Different from what we know, isn't it? So the culture has a lot to add to the story. Let's go ahead. The different kinds of stories. Stories about discoveries and inventions. I'll be sharing that with you today. Stories with a moral, Aesop's fables. And stories of how children survive hostility. Little Red Riding Hood. And stories from one generation, which have been passed on from one generation to another, epics, the Ramayana, Mahabharata. And affective stories produce an emotional response, The Ugly Duckling. And fantasy, fairy tales, and rhymes, Pied Piper of Hamlet. I've just given you an example. There are many more examples like this. Now, how to make a story visible? Story is narrated. How to make it visible? Dramatize it or act it out. Make props and images, or have chalkboard illustrations. Have picture books, have puppet shows, or videos and movies. So these will enhance the effectiveness of the story and make it visible. Now, what is needed if you have to tell a story? If you have to tell a story, you need to have a good presentation skills. Now, I'm talking in online, so I'm not able to have an eye contact. But if we were to do it in class, you need to have a good eye contact. And have enthusiasm and expressions. Don't be absolutely have a monotone that will put listeners to sleep, and they won't be able to enjoy it as one would with proper modular stimulus variations. Good preparation. Narrator should not keep fumbling during the narration. And good use of body and hand gestures, good modulation of voice. Let me start with a story. Draupadi Swayamvar. Now, as you know, the Pandavas had to undergo 14 years of Vanavas, which is the living in the forest, followed by 1 year of Ajnatvas, where they had to live so that they are not identified as Pandavas. And if they get identified, they had to repeat the 14 years of dwelling in the forest and 1 year of being working incognito. Now, their 14 plus 1 year of Vanavas and Ajnatavas were getting over. And it so happened that Drupad, the king, the father of Draupadi, announced a Swayamvar. Drupad had got a bow gifted to him by Lord Shiva. And he did not want his daughter Draupadi, who was beautiful and intelligent, and he did not want her to marry anybody. He wanted the best of the best Kshatriya to marry her. And Draupadi, in her own mind, had Arjuna in perspective. Now, these Pandavas are not to be identified as Kshatriyas or Pandavas. They were living in incognito, and they came to the Swayamvar not as Kshatriyas. They were sitting with the Aam Janta so that they would not get recognized. Now, one by one, the Kshatriyas came to the bow, and they tried to lift it. Nobody could lift it. And Karna comes there. Karna is able to lift it, but he is not able to string it. Now the king was getting a little flustered. There is no string that bow and win the hand of his daughter. So he throws it open to the general public. And all the brothers, they push Arjuna to go and do it. Now Arjuna picks up the bow, strings it, and takes an aim. Now what is it that he is supposed to do? Now he is supposed to look into the water or oil which is kept down in a bowl and take an aim at a fish which is revolving slowly in a circle. Look at that and hit the eye of the fish. And he manages to succeed. And Draupadi weds Arjuna. Now my story doesn't end here. Now I want you to tell me what were the physics concepts that were used in this exercise. Any idea?
Yeah, can resonate with it. Can resonate with it.
Yeah. Now what happens here is he is taking an aim at the eye of the fish and the fish is moving. So what he has to consider is the movement of the fish, how much time it takes to go around to come to that point where he's taking the aim. He has to calculate that. And also he has to take into effect that when the light rays move from one medium to another, there is a process called refraction which occurs. So he's taking into consideration, the refraction and the ability and the time taken for the fish to move. Did you see that? So you have to get the children interested in through a story and drive home the point. Let us look at more stories. King Hero asked Archimedes to find out whether his crown had pure gold or whether the jeweler had cheated him, because King Hero's regular jeweler was not available. So he had got the crown made from another person and he doubted his credibility. But one rider that was posed to Archimedes was the crown cannot be melted. But he had to find out how much of gold was there and whether it was adulterated, it was mixed with silver or copper. Now, Archimedes, poor fellow, 24 hours, he was thinking of how to solve this problem. He cannot melt the crown. So now, when he was sitting, they had those public baths where there was a tub and he could sit in it and have a bath. Now he goes to a public bath and he sits in his tub. And then when the water spills over, he gets a brainwave. And he was so happy with it that he runs down he runs down the street, not knowing that he is in the natural. And this story we had heard when we were kids, and that has still stayed with us. The impact was so much. Now I come to the point. Now, when the water spills over, he had a brainwave. These are all serendipitous discoveries. What is it that Archimedes discovered when the water spilled over? When the water spills over, what came to mind? Anybody who wants to answer this?
I think the educators won't be able to connect because they don't get these kind of trainings.
It is simple.
Yes.
When the water spills over,
Hmm.
the water that is spilled over is equal to the volume of the body that goes in. So he comes up with a formula for density. Density is equal to mass upon volume. And he is able to find out the volume displaced by silver, volume displaced by gold, and able to find out how much silver was mixed with the gold in the crown. And that principle is also taken into getting huge ships to move on the sea. So far, is it good? Are you able to understand? Let's go to the next. Now, one more serendipitous discovery. This is the story of smallpox. Edward Jenner was a doctor, and smallpox was such a dreaded disease that people used to die with smallpox. You know, the film actress Geeta Bali, I think she died of smallpox. Otherwise, the people would go blind. So they dreaded it. Now, of course, smallpox is eradicated, hopefully. Now, Edward Jenner had a keen eye for observation. He observed that the milk maids who used to milk the cows had blisters on their hands, which was called cowpox. And those who had cowpox would not get smallpox at all. So Edward Jenner thought there is something to do with cowpox, which stops the smallpox from getting, or shall I say, getting affected. This stops these people from getting affected by the smallpox. Now, what he did was, he took a little bit of from the blister that the milkmaids had on their hand. He drew out some amount of pus or serum or whatever it is called, and injected it in a boy who had just started smallpox. Such things were done at that time, but today such things cannot be done. One would be put behind bars. It's not acceptable. So now he injected that into the boy's body. And what happened was, the boy did not get smallpox. Whatever he had, that kind of stopped. So the other doctors also learned how to do whatever that Edward Jenner had done. Now, this led to the beginning of the vaccination process. Now, I have also mentioned in which class you can use this. See, you can use this topic under health and hygiene. Now, the disaster that led to the usage of helium. Again, this is serendipitous. Now, you can use this to teach chemistry in the upper primary, or you can even use this when you're teaching the periodic table. Now, Hindenburg, this is not the Hindenburg that we are talking about today. In the newspaper, you hear about Hindenburg and Adani. This is different. This Hindenburg is a blimp airship, which was flying from Germany to the US. And they were on May 3rd, 1937. It had 36 passengers and 61 crewmen. And many of the passengers wanted to attend the crowning of the British royalty, and it caught fire because it was loaded with hydrogen, which is inflammable. It caught fire and many of the passengers died. It had a few interesting things that I thought I could tell you. In spite of the fact that it was inflammable, there was a smoking section which was created in the blimp. It had, the steward used to permit the passengers to go in. It had a double door airlock. And the passengers were not permitted to get their own cigarettes or cigars or whatever. And a specially designed lightweight piano was made for the Hindenburg. Now, after this accident, when so many lives were lost, they decided that hydrogen was not to be used. And helium was introduced in place of hydrogen. Now, when helium was discovered, India had a role to play there. The French astronomer was observing the solar eclipse in Guntur, India. And he came across helium at Guntur during the watch of the solar eclipse. I hope you're getting the connection between a story and the topic.
Absolutely.
Alfred Nobel he didn't start as a Nobel Prize, the person who floated the Nobel Prize. He started as a person who invented dynamite. Now, one day, he was having breakfast at home. He had a brother, and his brother had died. And the French newspaper reported, "The dynamite man is dead." So Alfred Nobel started thinking, after my death, what do I want to be known as? The dynamite man or something else? He decided that he didn't want to be known as the dynamite man. And he came up with the Nobel Prize. And today we know him as the person who started the Nobel Prize. That is why they are called the Nobel Prizes. It was started by Alfred Nobel. And he is not known as the dynamite man. Now, so far I have told you about science. Now, let me tell you a little bit about history. All of us have heard of in the school in the middle years, you will be learning about the different routes for trade and how people used to come to India to buy spices. Vasco da Gama started from Portugal. The king gave him 4 ships and the crew members that were needed to steer the ship to India. And he set off from Portugal. And he took now you can see the path here. This is the path that Vasco da Gama used. He went around the Cape of Good Hope, went around the Cape of Good Hope, came to this place here. And there he was given the directions to reach India, and he reached Kochi. And actually, there are some interesting things that you need to know. We'll see it as we go on. The king of Kochi was so happy to see Vasco da Gama. He thought these foreigners had brought him some gifts. And he welcomed him with open arms. But what did Vasco da Gama give the king? He gave him 4 cloaks of scarlet cloth, 6 hats, 4 branches of corals, 12 boxes containing 7 brass vessels, some oil, sugar, and honey. The king was upset with this. He said, this is not a gift befitting the king. So he got angry and he told Vasco da Gama that he has to pay customs duty if he has to trade his ware. And Vasco da Gama was not willing to do that. This is the ship that Vasco da Gama sailed in, and this is Vasco da Gama here. So then, since the king was not willing to let him trade, he decided to leave India. But when he traveled, he did not take into account the monsoon. So the time taken by him to return was 2 times the time that he took to reach. The Sultan of Malindi, which is the place in Kenya, I told you from there he took directions to come to India. He erected a stone pillar in the name of Vasco da Gama. And the distance he traveled was greater than the length of the equator. Unfortunately, 33 members returned out of 120. 2 of the airships were also, 2 of his ships were also lost. And many had scurvy. Scurvy is caused by the deficiency of vitamin C. And then they started colonizing. The Portuguese started colonizing India. Goa was under their rule, and it was liberated in 1961. India was liberated in 1947 from the British, and Portuguese continued to stay in Goa, and that was liberated in 1961. Vasco da Gama was permitted to build a pillar at Malindi. The Sultan of Malindi was pleased with Vasco da Gama, and he permitted him to build a pillar. And finally, Vasco da Gama breathed his last on December 24th, 1524, and his body was buried in this church at Kochi. And after a few years, his body was taken to Portugal. Now, my question here is, how can we introduce this story to teach history or geography? Geography, to find out the latitudes and the longitudes, the path, how long it took. And history is where you are learning about these sailors and how they came to India. So that is history for you. So the story can be used to teach history as well as geography. Now, I have something to tell you about India. Now, India has got such rich cultural heritage, but somehow we didn't learn about it because we were following the British system of education. Now, the new education policy very clearly mentions that cultural aspect of India cannot be left behind. Now, here is a story. Aryabhatta lived in 5th century AD. He was an astrologer and an astronomer and a mathematician. And he was the one who proposed that Earth is not the center of the universe as it was believed. And he put forward the heliocentric model, which Copernicus thought of in 1543 and Aryabhatta thought of it in 5th century AD. And because of the fact that Earth rotates and the sun is at the center, he said the phases of the moon, the waxing and the waning stages, how they continue throughout the year. There is another beautiful video I have on the phases of the moon, which I will play at the end. He invented the zero and he defined the value of pi. So Copernicus was not the person who thought of this. It was discovered by Aryabhatta. Now, Bhaskaracharya, he was the first one to think of the principle of gravity in the 12th century, and Newton thought of it in the 17th century. There was 500 years gap between what Bhaskaracharya said and what Newton discovered. Now, we have all believed that Wright brothers were the ones who threw the first maiden flight. But Talpade flew the plane on Chowpatty, which is a beach at Mumbai, in 5 years before the Wright brothers did. That was the greatness of our ancestors. Now, this is about the phases of the moon. Let's hear it. It's a long video.
So from that, I'd like to take you to a very magical time, again in India, a magical time when the moon married the 27 daughters of King Daksha. Well, if you're the moon and you lived in those times, you could get away with polygamy, but don't try it today. So the story goes that each day the moon would visit one of his wives. However, his father-in-law, King Daksha, got word that the moon favors one of his wives called Rohini much more than the other wives. And he was furious with his son-in-law. How could he treat his daughters not equally? So he was furious with him. And so he cursed his son-in-law, but then the moon managed to go and plead with the god Mahadeva, and he got a boon from him, and as a result of which, he was condemned to a life of waxing and waning. Now, this enchanting story has encoded both complex as well as simple astronomical facts. Let me explain. The ancient Indians had observed that each day the moon rises in the east at a different time, and therefore against a different backdrop of the skies and stars. They also observed that it took approximately 27 days for the moon to return to the same backdrop of the sky and stars. So they decided to divide the 360-degree sphere into 27 sections. Now, it's not enough to just divide it into sections. You also need to be able to recognize these sections. So what they did is they decided to, they looked for the brightest stars in each of these sections, and they named each of those stars for one of the wives of the moons. These were the nakshatras. Nakshatras are loosely translated as the lunar mansions. So the 27 nakshatra model is exactly that. So see, this is a very, very powerful mnemonic that the ancients evolved, where using the mnemonics of the moon's wife's name, they could come out and look at the night sky and recognize the principal stars in it, as well as associate them with the phases of the moon, and thus mark the passage of time. This mechanism of passage of time has been used in India for an exceedingly long period of time, even to present times when you mark the occurrence of festivals using such a lunar calendar. So we are no closer to addressing the story of why did the moon favor Rohini? And I'd like to come to that. The ancients had observed that in its path over the ecliptic is the imaginary line from the east to the west, across which celestial bodies like the moon, the sun, and the constellations go. They had noticed that when the moon goes across ecliptic, sometimes it covers a principal star, and sometimes it just comes close but does not cover a principal star. So there is a technical name for this. It is called a lunar occultation. The ancients had observed that this occultation sometimes happens with some principal stars and not with others, and that also observed a periodicity. They observed a periodicity of 19 years, which today we call a Matin cycle. So it turns out that today with our studies, we know that if a principal star is located between 4 degrees and 6 degrees from the ecliptic, then it experiences a cluster of lunar occultations over a 4-year period, which repeats all over after 19 years. If the principal star is located greater than 6 degrees from the ecliptic, then it does not experience any occultation. I know that sounds very technical, but really speaking, these are very simple observational things that you can do. If you read a star almanac or if you read an astronomy magazine and get to know about an impending lunar occultation, all you need to do is go to the appointed time, look at the night sky, and you can make a naked eye observation of some of this phenomena. Or if you want a closer look, literally, you could use a binocular or a telescope. Or if you're so impatient, you could use a planetarium software in your computer and quickly simulate this phenomena. So I did all of these things to try and understand this Indian story of why did the moon favor Nakshatra Rohini over all the other nakshatras? Well, it turns out that Rohini is the star that in Arabic is called Aldebaran. So today we know them by the familiar name Aldebaran. Rohini is located at 5 degrees from the ecliptic. What does it mean? It means that Rohini is going to experience a cluster of occultations over a 4-year period that repeats all over after 19 years. Well, I counted in the latest cluster, the latest cluster is from 2015, ending this year in 2018, I counted 49 occultations of Aldebaran or Rohini with the moon. This is far greater than the number of occultations that the moon has had with any other nakshatra or principal stars. Not only had the ancients observed the phenomena of occultation, not only had they also looked at the frequency and called out how often each is occulted, they had also noticed that Rohini was occulted the most and preserved that observational wisdom in an easy to remember story of the moon and his wives and how he loved Rohini more than the others. So isn't it amazing? Such a simple, complex astronomical phenomena encoded in a simple idiom that is unfortunately easily dismissed as a silly myth. So the next time that any of you hear anybody dismissing an ancient story as a myth, do ask them to pause and reflect. They could be spurning millennia of wisdom that is encoded in the story. Thank you for listening to my stories.
Now you just have a story. You narrate the story and it's not enough. So you just need to get the children to give you need to assess the level of understanding that the children have had after listening to the story. So you can have your own ways. You can have one of those soft balls, throw it at the children, and the one who catches the ball has to give an answer. Or you can have a long string with knots tied at intervals. So the one, when he gets to the knot, he or she has to tell you the story as they have understood. Now, let me take you back to Red Riding Hood. Red Riding Hood is a story where Red Riding Hood goes to her grandmother's house and there is a big bad wolf. He goes to the grandmother's house, gobbles up the grandmother and lies down on the bed, covered. So Red Riding Hood comes there and she says, "What big eyes you have, Grandma." He says, "All the better to see you with, my dear." "And what big arms you have, Grandma." "All the better to hug you with, my dear." "What big legs you have, Grandma." "All the better to run with you, my dear." "What big teeth you have, Grandma." "All the better to eat you with, my dear." And he gets up and he tries to eat. Now, for small children, this is a little scary. They don't want Red Riding Hood to be eaten by the big bad wolf. So you can make a change here. Big bad wolf jumps up and then Red Riding Hood screams and runs out of the house. As she runs out of the house, who does she find? There is a hunter there. And the hunter looks at Red Riding Hood and tells her, "I will take care of you." And what does he do to the big bad wolf? He hunts the big bad wolf and takes Red Riding Hood to her own house. Everybody's happy. Yay! So you need to be able to modify. Don't bring in stepmothers and deserting children in the forest. Such stories are not to be told. Stories should have a happy end. Stories should make the children feel good. I hope you have understood this now. Thank you.
It was actually an eye opener, and all the wonderful subjects connected together to make the subjects easier for the people. And these are the things that are not taught in the teacher training institutes. These are
Well,
the things. Yeah.
as I've always maintained, some things are
Yeah.
not taught. Some
No,
things you
some
need
things
to
are
do.
not taught. And what I am seeing now is, after acquiring a position of a vice principal, that they are not ready to put in the efforts also because they have not been taught to do.
See, I've taught in a B.Ed college for 10
Yeah.
years. But what I have noticed is when they come to the B.Ed college, they don't have the school experience.
Yes.
Some of them finish their B.Ed, they do their M.Ed and get into the B.Ed college.
Exactly.
When they don't have the school experience, they cannot come up with it.
Yeah, not even the school experience. In fact, I've interviewed more than 15 people in this month, and most of them have no school experience at all. When you ask them about classroom management, or when you ask them about certain areas that exist in a school environment, they are unaware of it. They are unaware.
In my first book, I have got some, I don't know, about 50, 60 pages of stories. Most of them are serendipitous. So they could use it, but I still haven't heard anybody using it.
Definitely, I will have a proper launch also for you for your book, so that people can view and purchase your book also.
The book was launched in 2019.
No, you can show all your books again, no? So that if it is going
All
to
right.
create a better impact, if it is helping people
Yeah.
open their dormant, what do you call, the dormant brain that is not able to function in the different perspective, which the institutions are not try to take the efforts to teach, because there are so many courses available, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 7 months. They are not of use at all. People are just wasting money on such courses, and still they are not able to implement in on a productive basis. So if they attend the session, like you have said, how to connect the stories with concepts and with subject matter, it actually makes the work easier for them.
That's true.
Yeah, they don't want to invest money in some kind of session. They don't want to invest themselves, I will say, to understand the basics also.
They don't want to take the effort.
Therefore, not effort, they don't want to spend money. They just want an easy route out. They just want a shortcut. And that is what I'm trying to create an awareness, that if you attend people who are experienced, if you attend sessions that are going to actually help you to make your subject matter more easier through different ways. When we call on project-based learning or whatever learning, stories are also part of a project-based learning. Stories also can be created into projects and compiled into a stories also. So whether you are teaching a primary school student also, you need to connect the concepts of science that are taught to make the things easier for them to understand on a practical basis. But teachers are just opening the books. These are the questions that have to be covered. These are the fill in the blank. These are the true and false. And the child is just ratifying and learning. And okay, fill in the blanks done, true and false done. But the concept is not sitting in the head.
It won't. That is why my
Ah.
first book was titled From Chalk to Talk.
Exactly. So these are the areas where a lot of awareness has to be created on different ways. Like you have mentioned stories, and there are other ways also. So I mean, I keep watching so many sessions and all, but still, even then, after that, people connect with me and ask me, "Ma'am, please help us in this. Please help us in that. Please give us some guidance on this." So I mean, we need to actually plan. I will say a short 6-term course with people like you, people like me, people like more experienced educators, to make things easier for them to pick up and implement on the ground level.
That's true.
Yeah, because they say the challenges that they face is time is short. Number two is they are not well versed with the syllabus. Number three is curriculum is not up to mark for them. And with all these challenges and all, the resources are not available.
No, it's easy to say it's difficult. It's beyond the curriculum is too vast, the syllabus is too vast, and
Exactly.
resources not available. These are all excuses.
I
You
know
want to
that.
do it, you will do it.
Yes,
You want to do it, you will do it.
exactly. When you say that you actually want to eat the cake and you're missing the cake, and you have that that appetite or that craving to eat and cake, but the pan is in front of you, the egg is in front of you, the flour is in front of you, everything is in front of you. So if you're not able to eat the cake, come on, cook and start eat it on your own. When the ingredients are there in front of you, why are you waiting for a ready-made cake if it is not available?
No, but it's easy to say it's not available. That is what
Exactly.
they're trying to do.
Yeah,
Unfortunate. Unfortunate.
exactly. So that's what I'm saying. You need to innovate. You need to understand what is there and try to mold your strategies in such a way that so to make the learning easier. And you've
Yeah.
actually done an eye-opener session to help people understand the end square of the session today, the narrative nexus. And we say
Yeah.
it is just like saying Arnab Goswami saying on the channel of his news, the nation wants to know. So here we have Dr. Pamela Kudwa, ma'am. the educators who wish to know what is narrative nexus. So watch this session.
I should have mentioned one more thing. I even started this teaching mathematics through fairy tales. I
Oh,
should
okay.
have mentioned it. Yeah, I should have mentioned it. But anyway, let me tell you about it now.
No, because
Um,
I just recently got some query that how can maths be made easier for 8, 9, 10, 10 graders. They are finding it difficult to pick up the basic concepts, the pi, the sine, the cos, and 10 standard theorems and trigonometry and all. So they are not in, I mean, the educators of today are not that creative or that innovative. So has to make things easier for 8, 9, 10, 10 graders. So I keep getting queries, and that is why I posted on Metamorphosis that there is someone who really needs the help on this to make things easier for our 8th graders, 9th graders, and 10th graders to understand the basic concepts of theorems and trigonometry.
See, 8th, 9th, 10th, you will wear blinkers and go towards the board exam. But
Exactly.
till the eighth, you can play around and teach them through the playway.
That is what is not happening. No, so unless the ages before the 8th standard is made easier for them, the 8th, 9th, 10th will keep on finding difficulty in
Correct.
attempting the board exam. And here we
Correct.
are actually creating those kind of learnings. We are actually creating those kind of sessions to make learning easier, at least for the first 5 or first 8 years. People don't want to attend. The people don't want to invest themselves. I will say don't pay also, but you at least attend and see and try to take some learning at least. They don't want. They don't want. They just want to pick up some clues and become a speaker and speak there and there and there and come back. So that
Now
is
they have an excuse also, no? Artificial intelligence.
exactly. So
So
that
they
is why
don't have to think at all.
exactly. So that is why I don't take those kind of educators who pick up clues from here and there and become speakers. I want educators who are old school, who are actually wisdom knowledge being at the same time how to apply those into the academic curriculum also.
Yeah.
So it's not about okay, Pramila ma'am said this pick up. Pratik sir said this pick up. So and so said this pick up. So you're picking a dominoes kind of a puzzle from every speaker and becoming a speaker and speaking on different platforms. That's unprofessional, I will say. Actually unprofessional. So so this is what I actually go to the profile, check the profile, and if it is actually going to create an impact and help the educators implement on the ground level, which I think it does help. It does help many people when they watch the session. I get replies from the education department people also that excellent session, ma'am, excellent. You are actually creating awareness. So I say I only take those people whom I know can give justice to metamorphosis on a very healthy way on the academic ground.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, ma'am, for thank you. First thing is for being so cooperative today, understanding today for 30 minutes delay in the session. My humble thanks to you for this and privileged to have you for creating an eye-opener session, I will say. And please share the YouTube link as much as you can so that across the globe, educators can pick up what you have actually spoken over here. Let it be global. Let it be a
Sure.
global change.
Sure.
So, before I end my session, I would like to share some little bits of tips and that through Pabila ma'am's session as an education empowerer, what ma'am has done is she has helped people find better jobs, I will say, to make their jobs easier, earn better pay, and have a greater job security. That is the job of an empowerer. She has helped people make better decisions about their health and live healthier lives through stories blending into health and hygiene. She has actually created a community development eye-opener session that will help people take part in community development projects and civic engagements also. Pramila ma'am has also helped people strengthen the sense of group identification and foster social cohesion. Ma'am has also helped driven economic growth by encouraging innovation, productivity, and entrepreneurship also. She has actually broken the barriers of rote learning and provided a path out of unlearning for marginalized groups also. Ma'am has striven to help create critical thinking skills through this session that will help students and educators become more independent learners through stories. And last but not the least, ma'am has helped students develop the skills. Not only students, but educators also. They need to navigate the challenges that they will face in their classroom learning, in their syllabus learning, and in their book learning. So it is all about breaking the barriers, go beyond the books, create stories, blend them into academics, and make the concept easier for one and all. So thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful session.
you.
One kind of a takeaway from you for all, audience message for all, a wisdom message.
Well, keep learning.
Keep learning, keep growing, keep learning.
That's it.
Keep
Unless
learning.
you learn, you can't bring in a change.
Keep learning. So anyone who wants to share something, Sonal, you want to share something? Sonal, you want to share something? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Yeah,
Good
it's
evening.
a great pleasure, ma'am, to listening you. Actually, I joined little late, but it was a great learnings for me also, and saw the video also fully. Uh, every day, whenever I get up, I always just visit Metamorphosis. What's the today's event? What's the today going to be happen? So I mostly think that I want to learn something and I want to keep on learning. And through Metamorphosis, I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much to Sonal ma'am for giving us all these opportunities to get so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
ma'am, for
Camilla.
this wonderful session, and hope to have you once again for the blog, for the books, and for whatever books you have shared. We'll definitely let your books go global also, and let people go through the books and make learning easier for one and all. Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Ma'am,
you.
Thank
please
you.
share
Thank you.
yeah, ma'am, please share the names. We too also can go through the books and
Yeah, we will have one more session with the books
Yeah.
with ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Chalo, bye. Thank you once again.